Her name is Norma Jean. She was a uniformed cop for 11 years before she turned in her badge for life as a call girl. It led to arrest, jail, and a book. That's the talk of the Los Angeles Police Department.
When I was still in the police department, late at nighttime, we pulled in the police car and had a little hanky-panky in the parking lot.
Norma Jean Almodovar may be the most troublesome woman the Los Angeles Police Department ever had to deal with. It's not enough that she was a cop who says she had affairs with her fellow officers. It's not enough that she left the force and became a call girl. No, she had to go and write a book about it. And that, she says, is what caused the most trouble of all. She says she's been set up, she's been busted, and she's gone to prison, but now Norma Jean is back.
I think what they wanted to do was just see if they couldn't intimidate me into silence.
It all began 20 years ago. Norma Jean was a young and naive 21-year-old, an LAPD traffic cop on the famed boulevards of Hollywood. These were the heady glory years of the new centurions, and with her petite figure and flaming red hair, Norma Jean was the prize catch of the precinct.
For me to be asked out by all these really cute guys, it was just like, wow, this is so neat. And I had my pick of anyone in the police station.
Too bad for Norma Jean. She says her relationships were mostly one-night stands. Her alleged lovers were mostly married cops. Norma Jean says she had no moral problem with that social life, but she did have a problem with what she claims some of the cops were doing out on the street. She says some of the boys in blue were overstepping the boundaries of the law.
They would arrest somebody for a crime, and there was really no way to make that particular charge stick. They would embellish the report so that it would make it possible to keep that person in jail.
10 years of walking that thin blue moral line must have had some effect, because when she quit the force, she could only see one other line of work. Norma Jean went back to one of her contacts from the street, a call girl, who in turn introduced her to a Beverly Hills madam.
So she said, well, would you be interested in trying this? And why don't I call a client right now? And I was like, well, geez, if I don't try it now, I probably never will. I'll probably chicken out.
Norma Jean went out on her first call that very afternoon. She was now working the wrong side of the law as a call girl.
I made a lot of people miserable when I gave tickets. And they used to call me all kinds of names, including whore. You gave me a ticket. Now my clients went away very happy.
Norma Jean says the experience added great material for the book she wanted to write about the alleged corruption in her days as a cop. But only a few months later, her little fantasy came to a crashing halt. And she says it was a good friend, a fellow cop, who ultimately did her in.
She said, gee, Norma Jean, you know, I've always fantasized about being a call girl. If I was young and attractive, I'd make $1 million, you know, and we kind of laughed and joked about it. And I said, well, if I ever find anybody who'd like your type, I'd be happy to let you know.
A few weeks later, Norma Jean set it up, a so-called date for another female cop who wanted to be a hooker.
She asked me the question. She said, well, what do I have to do? And I said, nothing you haven't done in a normal adult relationship. And she said, is there money involved? And I said, yes.
What Norma Jean didn't know was that her friend was interested for very different reasons, because under her dress, she was wearing a concealed microphone.
Friday night before the date, she called me again, and she began asking all these peculiar questions. And I really thought, wow, geez, you know, I mean, why is she asking me that? Is she that dense that she has to ask me again questions she asked me the other day when she was here? And so then I asked her, are you setting me up?
The next morning, Norma Jean still had an uneasy feeling and called her friend to cancel the date. A short time later, she says, there was a knock at the door.
Are you Norma Jean Almodovar? We have a warrant for your arrest.
In came 7 cops with their guns drawn. And I was just like in a state of shock. What do they want? What have I done?
Norma Jean says they wanted her manuscript.
I said, well, what am I being charged with? And they finally told me that I was charged with trying to lure into a life of prostitution. I'm going, ha!
But Norma Jean wasn't about to go to prison without a fight. She hit the talk show circuit, went on radio shows, and lectured everywhere, all in an effort to turn the tables on the cops. She even made a run for political office.
As the judge said later in an interview, he said that I was ruffling feathers. And I didn't know you could go to prison for feather ruffling, but apparently it's a heinous crime in California.
On July 31st, 1987, 4 years after her arrest for pandering, Norma Jean was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Norma Jean's finally published that book, and she's the toast of towns from New York to L.A. She even got to square off with her old nemesis, former Chief Daryl Gates, who's now a radio host.
Cop is a generic slang term for any law enforcement agent, and I was enforcing laws. Therefore, I can say without reservation that I was a traffic cop, and if you want to abbreviate that, I was a cop.
She is a celebrity now. Her story is out there, but at home, Norma Jean lets down her guard and wonders what it all means.
It was hard to say if it was worth it. But I know one thing, I would do it all over again. It's a hard thing to say, but I would.
Now, the great bubblegum war, caught on tape, neighbor versus